All right, we are still giving people a chance to hop on. Thank you so much for joining today's workshop through, I've been calling it the Change Management Network. They changed the name to Futocracy. I can't say it really well. So I'm still sticking with the Change Management Network, but it is a global event. Hopefully you've had a chance to attend some of the other sessions. I was able to join one yesterday that was really interesting. It was led by a man named Alex, and he talked about just different change management models and theories and whether or not they were still relevant. I thought that was kind of cool. So hopefully you've had a chance to take advantage of this free event, which is very cool that this is happening again this year. I participated in this last year and learned a lot from other speakers and had a chance to speak as well. And just huge thank you to Dr. Worth and Dr. Reg for organizing and orchestrating this, this event. So it is 12 o'clock. I'm still going to give people a chance to join. And so we'll sort of ease our way into this. And I am running this solo today. A couple of things, actually. It is a snow day. I am in Colorado. I'm not quite sure where you all are from in the chat. If you want to say, you know, like where you're hailing from, what part of the world or time zone. I'm in Denver, Colorado. It's noon Mountain Time. It's a snow day, which means the kids are at home. My husband did take them out to go play. So hopefully, yes, more New York City, Denver. So hopefully it's quiet here. It doesn't mean that it will be totally quiet. We are in a suburban neighborhood and kids may come knock on our door. I did put a sign up, but half the time that doesn't stop them. They just want to know where my kids are at. So thanks in advance for your patience. I will do my best to monitor the chat. If for some reason you ask me a question and I'm missing it, just unmute yourself and feel free to interrupt me. I do have videos on off. If you prefer to have your video on, this is being recorded. So I think everybody knows the conference workshops are being recorded. Feel free to have it on as well. It's kind of your choice. We got South Africa and Chicago, also snowy, very cool. Thanks for joining, everybody. But yeah, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to stop and ask me. I will try to monitor the chat to the best of my abilities. If we get disconnected for some reason, hang tight. I will join back in. I'm hoping that the heavy snow doesn't affect my internet connection. And then as we are getting started, just take a few moments. So whether you are coming from one meeting or another, however your day has been, just give yourself a few minutes to really arrive. And I'm tapping into some of my background as a yoga instructor. This is a great way to really settle into a space, maybe some breaths in through your nose, open mouth exhale, sort of calming yourself down and creating space for learning. And that's really what we're doing here in these first few moments. So if you need to get up, get a drink of water, move around before we get started, please do. That will actually help as well in terms of your ability to engage with the content. So while you're doing that, I will introduce myself. Don't feel like you're going to miss anything. My information is right there as well. But again, my name is Jessica Crow, and I am the founder of Apogy. We provide change management, change leadership, training, coaching, and consulting. So what we do is we combined education and certification in change management with leadership development and coaching. And what makes us different as well is that we really do focus on the whole person. Apogy was founded with the understanding that well-being is a kind of a key enabler of high performance, both at the individual level as well as the organizational level. So that's why I encouraged you to take a moment for yourself to fully arrive in this space, get that movement break in, get that drink of water, because I want you to feel like you have the ability to engage in the conversation today. So I'll go ahead and get started. We've got about 6 people here. Thank you again for joining. Let's see. Here we go. Let me move this down. Before we get going into the presentation, I do want to give more background on who I am so you understand why I am presenting on this topic. I started Apogy In 2019, about 17 years of my experience were in corporate setting. And prior to starting Apogy, I worked at a global healthcare company called DaVita. And that is where I led clinical strategy and innovation. And that was the kind of the role that I had before I left the organization. Almost a decade earlier, I had joined the organization in a brand new role for the company. I was one of the 2 founding members of the change management team at that time. So prior to DaVita, my background was in communications and marketing and training. And I went through a certification program through ProSci, actually, when I was trained in change management. We also had an internal consultant who was supporting our development. And what I really appreciated about that experience was it gave me the vocabulary, the understanding, it organized how I think about the work, how I thought about the work that I was doing previously, and then kind of up-leveled it in terms of the skills and the approach that I use to engage, support, and help people transition through their change journey. From there, I went into a leadership development program, which really gave me an appreciation for the value of intentional coaching, group coaching, and that transformed my career trajectory at DaVita. I had the opportunity to take on roles in operations, in IT. I spent time in clinical strategy, clinical programs. And while I was there, I went through yoga teacher training too. So I learned about the mind-body connection, developed a deeper appreciation for that as well, which led me to where I am now. So when I left DaVita in 2019, I knew I wanted to give back in some way. I wanted to take everything that I had learned and provide a training and development program for people who are interested in developing their change management skills, which is something I used in every single role that I was in, and also supporting their development, self-awareness as a leader. In my free time, I like to ski with my kids and my husband. Again, snowy Colorado, there's lots of opportunities to do that. Yoga will continue to be, I'm teaching only part-time now, but I will continue to be an important practice in my life. And during the pandemic, I started running. Maybe some of you picked up different habits as well, some good, some bad. I know that we all kind of had that balance, but I started running and I just haven't stopped. I've done a couple of half marathons. I think I'm going to tackle a marathon at some point. I'm not quite sure about this year, but that's a little bit about me, my background, and then also some personal parts of my personal aspects of my life. But now I'm interested in kind of you all and just where you work. And this will make sense in the context of where we're going next in the conversation. But in the comments, if you could share, are you working from home full time? Are you remote? Or I'm sorry, are you in the office the entire time? Are you in a hybrid situation where sometimes you're at home or sometimes you go into the office? And as you can see on this slide, hybrid, okay, cool. The real CEO of Apogy is actually my cat. We call her CEO Cat. She is very demanding, kind of needy, but we make it work in our co-working environment. So I am fully at home. That is my working situation. You've got fully remote, and then in transition, optional hybrid. Yeah, so kind of a cross-section of where people are at. And this continues to be a big topic, as you are fully aware, I'm sure, of conversation and how to navigate this as leaders in an organization. Really, the definition of the business office has been totally changed thanks to the pandemic. So there's some studies out there. This seems about in line with what I've been sort of reading about. About a third are in a hybrid in office, and then less than 4%, I think, are fully remote. But me and Dolores are definitely in that camp. So let's just talk about why we're here. So you joined this conversation, I'm sure, for a lot of different reasons, but is to talk about change leadership in the digital workplace. And thank you for sharing kind of what your work situation is. It matters. Over the past couple of years, we've seen this massive shift in terms of the technology tools that people are using and investing in, and the funding that is going in to digital collaboration tools, productivity tools. And we've also seen this big shift in terms of how people think about where they work and why. The World Economic Forum actually did a study. They looked at all of the jobs in the United States, at least. So I know some some of you are not in the United States, but of the 125 million full-time jobs in the US, about half of those can be done remotely. And so whether or not that's actually happening is a different story. But I will say a lot of people want to keep things the way they are. So the data shows too that of those jobs that can be done remote, that about 60% want to have some sort of flexibility where they're not going back into the office the entire time. And about 30% of that 60 million, they never want to go back into the office. And there's a lot of reasons for this. People are citing it's improved well-being. They don't have that commute. They've got greater flexibility. And those are really positive things for many people. At the same time, and maybe you have been experiencing this, work culture and the environment and engagement has shifted. And so in talking with some of my clients and peers in this space, I think, when I was in the corporate setting, office politics were a thing. They were very real, and that still exists, but just not in the same way. And that has an impact on your role as a change leader and practitioner. And so it's important to kind of keep that in mind as you think about how do you engage stakeholders? How do you work with your sponsors and influencers? So just being aware that there has been a shift and figuring out how to navigate that is an important part of why we're here today. And there's so much opportunity. So with this digital transformation, with all of the kind of the change in how people are working, there's a lot of roles available for change management experts. I looked at LinkedIn, which is a social media platform that I use, and there's 485,000 change management jobs posted, which is incredible considering last year around this time, I did a study and there's about 160 million. So that's about a 3x increase in terms of companies that are asking for help with change leadership and change management. So a lot of opportunity for you as professionals in this space. And I am assuming that you're joining this conversation because you have some background in change management, whether you've been trained or certified, or you're interested in getting into this space and you've done some research, or maybe you're in a role where you're a project management professional or an operations leader and you've done some of these things, but you just haven't had the title, or you haven't thought about it. It's just not the title, like the full-time role. So there's a lot of ways to approach this, but really your role as a change leader in the digital workplace is to start to identify those gaps in the capabilities of the current workforce, and then the ones that are needed to fully realize the value of the investments that are being made in the digital collaboration tools, in the new systems, and the new platforms. And that's always been the case, right? The purpose of change management is to help people through that transition process, but it has evolved with more and more people working from home, and the relationships that were organically, that came about sort of naturally thanks to the spontaneous interactions that took place in the office, those don't happen quite as much anymore. So as change leaders, we need to evolve our approach as well. So with that in mind, the whole context, the reason providing that context is because we're going to talk about the goals and objectives for today. Want to make sure I'm keeping up with the chat. Okay, we're good. All right. So for today, we're going to start with a macro view of who you need to be as a change leader to be effective in the digital workplace. So what are the skills, the traits, the capabilities that you can possess, some of the softer skills? Then from there, we'll dive into some of the tactical, the practical things that you can do as a change management, change leadership professional in your organization. And then at the end, we'll start to look forward. Like, what else can you do to evolve and adapt your role as a change professional to add even more value to the organization? And these recommendations as well. So this is based on training, research, my own experience, and then kind of the results that I'm seeing with clients as well. So I'm not going to spend a ton of time getting back into change management theory and studying different models. That's not what you're going to get today, but you will get ways to up level and increase your capability as a professional. So sound good? Any questions, comments before we keep going? Okay, we'll keep going. All right. So in the comments, again, just trying to keep a little bit, thank you, Chantal, little bit of interaction here, pretty simple. We'll just sticking with the comments. What does the word, when you think of the phrase change leader, what words come to mind for you? I'll pause. Love it. Inspirational. Support, empower, collaborator, communicator. Absolutely. Yep. Articulate a vision, show a path. Any other comments? These are great. Well, I went through a similar activity, similar exercise on my own, and I put together a word map, so to speak, of all the different words that came to mind when I thought about the phrase change leader. So a lot of the same words that you came up with, so we're already on the same level, and that's great in terms of how we're thinking about this. What I would like to talk about next, though, is kind of what it means to be a change leader, at least from Apogy's perspective. Now, again, there's lots of different choices when it comes to getting training and education for change management, change leadership. This is kind of how we think about it. So if it's different than how you've been trained in the past, that's okay. Hopefully you kind of pull some stuff out of this that you can use in the future. But how we think about this, what it means to be a change leader, is really across 3 paradigms. So we're talking about having the right skills, the right mindset, and the right behavior. So when we talk about skills as a change leader, we are talking about change management skills, and we're also talking about leadership skills. And while some leaders believe that they are effective at change management, what they might be missing is some of the systems and process and tools. And not every change management professional is an effective leader, because they might be missing some of the capabilities, the traits, the skills that they can develop to make them more effective. Mindset is super important. So we talk about having an adaptive mindset at Apogy, which essentially means that you believe with effort and focus and support that you can learn, grow, and adapt. And maybe you've heard it referred to as a growth mindset, like growth versus fixed mindset. We talk about it in the context of an adaptive mindset, and then having the right behavior. So change leaders, you care for the human side of change. This is a really big part of our platform, and many platforms that I'm seeing today, which is really exciting. There's more of a focus on wellness and well-being, and you understand the importance of building relationships and caring for people as people. And by doing those things, you're really creating an opportunity to accelerate the pace of change within an organization, because most of business strategy execution, you have to go through people, and relationships are such an important part of that. So the behaviors that you choose align with your mindset, your skills, and your understanding of what it takes for an organization to successfully experience the most value out of their transformation investments. So we're going to dive into these in a little bit more detail. And this is where we get interactive. Now, I am trying out a tool, so bear with me here. I'm going to stop share for a second, and then I'm going to start it again after I put this, for those of you that saw this earlier in the comments, if you can log into Miro. So with the reliance on technology, there's lots of really cool tools out there that you can use to increase engagement and collaboration with employees. At the same time, there's a learning curve, right? It takes some time to understand how to use them. So we'll see if this works. If this ends up being an exercise where it's like, it's more work, than it's worth, then we can pivot. Let me share my screen again. So tell me, can you guys and gals see my screen? And it should be a target. Let's see. I lost my comments. There we go. We got Jen in. All right. Yes, perfect. Okay. So what I would like to do with this, and if you can't get into Miro, totally fine. If you can, play around. And this is your opportunity too, if you haven't used Miro in the past, to get some experience using this tool, because so much of what we do is online and virtual. This could be a fun way for you to introduce collaboration and engagement in a future meeting. But the question is, what are in your mind the most important skills that a change leader can have in the digital workplace? And I'm seeing some stuff come through, so I'll give you a couple of minutes to do that. And y'all are fast learners unless you already have experience. I did this once before with in another setting, and it took me forever to figure out how to get those sticky notes. But long story short, you click on this button over here. You can see my screen. Click it once, drag it, and then drop it by clicking again, and then you can enter in the information. So we'll give you a couple minutes to do that. And the closer you get to the center, that's more important to you as a leader or as a skill. And then the further away you get, then it's just less important. So I'll show too. So I'll grab it with my pointer, drop it once by letting go, enter in the comment. So I'll do empathy, and then click it and set. There we go. Got empathy over by Jen. And thank you for playing with me in this too. This is good to see. Compassion. Trust, yep. Like I said, if you're struggling with the tool, you can just enter it into the comments too. So don't feel like you can't participate. We'll do this a couple different ways. Mindset, yep. Give it another minute or so. So if you have any other comments, just go ahead and put that in there. And what I'll do afterwards, because this board saves, we can I'll send it to the group who was able to join the conversation today. Got servant, I'm guessing servant leadership, maybe. Effective communication. We will wrap it up. So let's see what we have. I see one more. We've got effective communication. Paolo's entering one more. Well, since you have access to this, keep adding, because again, I will send this out. I am going to switch back to the presentation, but this will stay up. So if you're able to get in, if you want to keep playing with this because you want to have a copy of this after the conversation, that is totally fine. So I'm going to stop share. You still have the Miro board, and then I will be sharing from here. All right, so we should be back at my presentation. If for some reason you're not seeing my presentation, then please let me know. But again, thank you for trying out that Miro board. You know, it's a fun way to interact with people. I think there's different settings that this works in, the intention behind kind of the tools that you use, it matters. So really, thanks again. That was kind of a fun activity. So according to, I've done some research on the top skills, as many of you maybe have. According to, so LinkedIn Learning, they offer courses and training on different topics, business skills, technical skills, etc. And according to LinkedIn Learning, they identified these top skills as being the kind of the most important, most in demand globally, which I thought was really interesting. As we move into an environment where there's more technology that's being used, being able to use those competently, digital fluency, it certainly matters. But these other skills, change management, leading through change, emotional intelligence, resilience, I found this to be really refreshing and informative, that our human skills, our traits are just as important as our ability to use the tools that have been provided to us. And so building resilience, that is the number one skill, building resilience and adaptability, which is amazing because resilience is really, it is what helps people sort of persevere amidst all of this change that continues to happen. So if you're wondering, well, how do you develop resilience as a skill? It's not as hard as you think, which is good. This outlines a few ways to approach building resilience for yourself and for your team, for your organization. And there's lots of studies that show, resilient individuals, resilient organizations, they are better at problem solving, emotional control, optimism, which also is important for perseverance and resilience, and adapting to change and disruption. And so an example, replace self-concern with self-reflection. This can be an activity that you host with your team and have a conversation about, like, why is this, why does this matter? How are they feeling about it? And just creating space for that is new and different, and doing it consistently is one way that you can start to build resilience into your organization. I mean, the hardest part about all of this is doing it and doing it consistently. And I think, that's no surprise, right? If you think about it, if somebody were to ask you, how do you stay healthy? You'd say, diet, exercise, sleep, some combination of that. So it's not that it's rocket science. It's just that doing that consistently, that is truly the challenge. And that's why doing something like this consistently, that is the opportunity that we have as change leaders to start to build that muscle memory and make resilience a habit versus an ad hoc experience for our fellow employees. Now that we've talked about the skills, let's jump into the mindset that change leaders can embody and possess. So, honestly, your mindset is one of the most important things that you have as a change leader, an adaptive mindset. It's really this mental attitude of evaluating the facts, the situation, and having a willingness and openness to change, to adapt in order to survive and to thrive. And it is not easy for a couple of reasons. One being that as human beings, we are designed to resist change. There is a biological process that happens in our body. It is called homeostasis, and it is designed to maintain a state of equilibrium despite sort of external factors kind of coming in and threatening to disrupt the stimuli, right? So we have this biological process that happens in our body. Choosing a mindset that is open and adaptive requires a lot of self-awareness, especially in moments of stress where we may be triggered or less able to draw on those skills that we have developed by focusing on and being intentional about becoming a leader, emotional intelligence, empathy, things along those lines. So I'm not going to say it's easy, but it is important. And it's something that as you embrace, own, step into your role as a change professional, a change leader, it is important to keep this in mind if you want to be effective or even more effective in an environment where you are competing for people's attention and mind share, and the distractions are high, right? Not just from a workplace perspective, but all of the things that are happening outside of work, their home life, the state of the environment, politics, those things matter. Those things influence how people show up in their lives, and that is at work and at home. So it's something to be aware of, so you can start to go in that direction. And one way for you to make that shift on an individual level, so as you know, we all know that change starts at the individual level, is to invite curiosity into your world. It's one of the most useful tools that you as a change leader can leverage. And when it comes to cultivating an adaptive mindset, curiosity is really what gives you a chance to explore from a non-judgmental perspective, to consider and reflect. And without that level of curiosity, it's easy for us to sort of become myopic in terms of how we think about things. And so there's two sets of questions here. There's questions on the left and questions on the right. And creating, questions are a great way to invite curiosity in. If you look at the questions on the left, the difference here is that this is approached from the perspective of information gathering. What is your next step? That's a very direct question. While the other questions, these open-ended questions, they create space for you to dig a bit deeper. Now, again, you can do this exercise with yourself. This is something that you can do with your team as a change leader. You can do this with the people that you are responsible for influencing and getting engaged in the process. And this will also help you build relationships. Curiosity is a powerful relationship builder. And as we mentioned earlier on in the presentation, your ability to build trusting, meaningful relationships will have such a huge impact on your ability to be successful in your role as a change professional. Little quick story. When I first started at DaVita, a long time ago, I had come from an organization that operated differently. We'll say that. And it was a great experience. But one thing that my first bosses impressed on me that has stuck with me ever since, and that I've leveraged as somebody who leads and helps others lead organizational change, was that relationships are how business gets done. So instead of me joining a conversation and getting right into into business, he's like, ask how people are doing. Ask about their weekend, create space for that small talk. Because when people know who you are and they know a little bit about you and they know that you care, it's going to mean the difference. And you've probably experienced this in your own work. It's going to mean the difference in terms of their willingness to listen, to engage, or not. And that is the reality of the kind of the organization, of the business environment. And that's not a bad thing. It's actually a really great thing, especially if you're curious and authentically care about people, which I'm sure all of you do. In terms of what you can do. So if I were to give you a recommendation, which I am, on the behaviors that you can choose that will support your development and allow you to up level as a leader, a change leader, and a professional, these would be them. And there's a difference here in terms of behaviors and values. So values are, most organizations have their core values, or some do. Hopefully your organization has core values, but there's a difference there. Those are ideas, those are concepts. That's a noun, right? Behaviors are action oriented. They are actions we see people doing. And by connecting and internalizing these behaviors and your actions, this is how you start to build that connection, that engagement, that trust that is so critical for change to be accepted and adopted and sustained across an organization. And truthfully, it's easier to coach for behavior versus values alignment. So, you've got an opportunity to give feedback by kind of focusing on these aspects of behavior. So here are some examples of activities that you can try out in your organization to build relationship, to build connection. At the beginning of this session, I included an about me slide. And it wasn't that I wanted to share with you my, all the things that make me qualified. I mean, hopefully that was helpful, but the real purpose is that I wanted to model the behavior and create space for relationship building. So if you and I were coworkers, we're teammates, you could ask me in the future, hey, did you get to go skiing this weekend? Or how are your kids doing? What's your cat's name? Again, really small things, but that's how you start to do that relationship building. And it is so powerful. I promise, if you're doing it, continue to do it. If you haven't thought about it in this way, try it out and see how it changes your experience. And again, it's just so important when that opportunity for the spontaneous interaction isn't there. You have to be intentional about how you build relationships. Don't skip the small talk. And again, not every forum and setting will be appropriate for you to present an about me slide. The key takeaway is care for people as people, get to know people, and that relationships are a core part of your leadership aptitude. Your ability to build relationships is going to set you up for success as somebody who is responsible for leading and implementing and facilitating change in an organization. So I'm going to pause really quick. I've been talking a lot. Any questions or comments as we're sort of midway through the workshop today? Okay, no questions. If you have any, again, please stop me so we can engage. Okay, now we are going to get into, if I can advance my screen, the more practical, tactical components of your role as a change leader and professional. So we've talked about who you need to be. Now we're going to talk about what you can do or perhaps do differently. So being effective in the digital workplace, it requires a new set of capabilities. Thank you, Tabogo. A new set of capabilities to really complement the ones that you already have. And what's really exciting about this is that software development, user experience, design thinking, there's some great grounding principles and best practices that you can leverage as a change leader to be even more effective in your role. So for example, using empathy to help define the problems or impacts, partnering with end users to think about the best way forward, engaging them in the process of designing the plans and piloting and testing the change that is taking place, and even utilizing coaching as a tool to help people overcome the barriers that sort of naturally happen when we're going through change and disruption. And so by integrating some of these things that we'll go through next, it's going to help you remain current in your role and adapt to the current environment. So let's get into, we'll kind of start with that design thinking, user experience, really software development and change management. They both have the same starting point, which is the end. You're beginning with the end in mind. So when you start with the end user in mind, it means engaging your employees as co-creators versus stakeholders that need to be managed. And that might seem like a nuance, but it's an important nuance because you're approaching the conversations differently and you're asking the question, what do you want them to think, or what do they need to think, feel, and do in order for us to successfully be successful with whatever it is that we're rolling out, whatever the shift may be. And, it's not about preventing failure, so to speak, because that's sort of a misnomer in how you think about project failure, change failure. It's really about mitigating value loss, which can happen at, before the change is even sort of during the ideation stage. So when you incorporate some of these principles from software development, from UX design, from design thinking, you're giving yourself an opportunity to reframe how you approach the entire strategy and planning process from a change leadership perspective. It can also include asking what people want to see take place before the implementation ever starts to support adoption, and then prioritizing those activities throughout the process to really transform the relationship with not only the change that's taking place, but you as the change leader and practitioner who is supporting that process. Again, borrowing from software development, from those practices, design thinking, UX design, it's really, so we think about those roles, think about end users in the context of personas. They're your internal customers, right? They are, it's how you develop empathy for your end users. And at the same time, thinking about your stakeholders in this way can be used to help you plan and strategize and introduce change into the organization, because your impacted end users, your personas, they can really provide you with some deep insights, not only in terms of how the changes will impact their role and responsibilities, but that full journey from the ideation to the workflow to the end user communications. And using a human-centric, experience-driven lens, it's how you stay focused on that people side of change. It's how you unlock the value of the investments that are being made. And it's going to create more value and for your organization overall. Now, it's important when we talk about understanding your end users, those personas, this is a key part of your role as a change professional. But it's not just thinking about it, again, in terms of the impact on their role, their workflows. It's considering the human factors as well that can absolutely influence their readiness for change. So for example, you've got persona A. You can also refer to this person as, we'll say, Gary from accounting. He has a wife. He just had twins, so he's a little bit tired as a dad. He doesn't get a lot of exercise. Financially, he's pretty secure. Sometimes he plays basketball with his friends, so his social connections are pretty, they're good, but he's just feeling a little rundown just because he's got a lot of things going on in his life. Persona B, we'll call her Gail. She's a very experienced physician. Her kids are grown and out of the house. She is financially secure. She goes for walks with her friends almost weekly. So she's in a very different stage of her life, and that is sort of reflected in her overall well-being. Then you've got persona C. We'll say this is Crystal, and she is a young professional. She's got roommates. She's paying off some debt from school, but she's super motivated and she wants to show up and perform well and wants to advance within the organization. These are three very different personas that if you hadn't sort of thought about the full scope and spectrum of who these people are, you're going to be missing some of those details that influence how they process and experience change, because roles and human beings those are two different conversations. And when you understand the full picture of a person, it's a lot easier to understand why change impacts people so differently. So I promised we weren't going to go through a ton of change management theory and models, and we're not. There's a lot of models and frameworks available today. Some target the emotional process that people go through. Others focus on kind of the goals and objectives of change management. No matter what model is working for you that you've utilized in the past, the key takeaway here is that people experience change differently. So for example, persona A, I think I called him Gary, the accountant. It might take him a lot longer to go through that process of accepting and adopting the change because he's just got a lot going on. While Crystal, who's persona C, she's like, yeah, let's do this. I want to show up. I have the mind share. I'm excited about this. I feel great. Like, all the reasons. So it's just meant to say people will go through this in different ways and for different reasons. And that's okay. But that makes your job as a change leader even more important because you're going to be anticipating and addressing those needs. And one way that you can do this is to think about the 5 phases of individual change. I think this is the last change model. So, so bear with me. But this slide explains why people experience change so differently. So there's really 5 main stages of response, and that at each stage, your commitment to the change increases. Where people get stuck is in that self-concern phase. And human-centric change leadership means that you recognize that this is a dynamic and you take steps to help people make that mental shift that results in the kind of the behavior change that you're hoping to realize in order for the change to be a success. So that self-concern, what we're talking about here, and again, think about the last time that you went through a change that your organization went through. Maybe it was a life change. What immediately comes to mind is, how will this impact me, my job, my finances, my relationships, my advancement, my potential, all of those things. That is normal. Again, that is how we are sort of designed as humans to sort of think in that way. It's how we've survived over the years as a species. So understanding that gives you an opportunity to tackle those really important questions right out the gate and help people understand and feel secure and stable and create space for those conversations where they can express their fears and concerns, as well as what excites them about what could be changing. And without that, you're losing an opportunity to build relationships, and you're not giving people a chance to share and vent and express themselves, which is a part of the change process. And so, what I'm trying to impress here is that there's this saying, like, it's not personal, it's business, or maybe it's not business, it's personal. I forget how it goes, but the point is that we need to bridge that disconnect, that it is business and it is personal, and focusing on people and their well-being and caring for all of that is different and new and very important, especially in a world where we are hyper connected through technology, but disconnected and isolated in so many ways. So when you ignore or underestimate the importance of this self-concern piece, this is where resistance shows up. And you've seen some of these in your own organization. This is what resistance, self-concern looks like. And truthfully, in a digital workplace, this is probably easier to identify because you can track and check systems data and utilization and kind of online time, which is neither good nor bad. But importantly, data is only part of the equation. It's really what you do next with that information that matters most. And so I want to come back to this idea of leadership skills and what you can do as a change professional. And part of your job is coaching, right? Coaching and preparing other leaders to successfully lead change. Martin Seligman, he is the kind of father of positive psychology, the behavior science, neuroscience of change. And he did research on this concept of learned helplessness and versus learned optimism. So that stick with itness. And the research showed that we can teach and coach for optimism and resilience. And so coaching is a way to transform the conversation. It really shifts the focus from the problem to the person. And you don't have to be trained or certified in coaching to be able to do this. And you've likely utilized this in your toolkit as a change management professional. The important thing is to come back to this from a self-awareness perspective and start to incorporate it intentionally into your overall approach. So we talk about aligning. This is that vision, purpose, aligning on the expectations, and then asking those questions that get into that self-concern that creates the resistance to change. Active listening is a core component of successful coaching. Listening to understand versus listening to respond. And then that co-creative process, offering solutions, offering support, a big part of coaching versus managing, especially. And this is a part of, being a good manager too, but really recognizing and honoring and celebrating not only the mistakes the wins, but also the mistakes. That's how you learn, and that's how you develop resilience. So that is a tool you can add to your toolkit. And then many of you are likely seeing this too. We talked a little bit earlier about how the political, the environment within the organization has shifted. So if you have experience as a change management professional, you've been trained through some of the organizations that exist here, I think globally, actually, like ProSci, for example, or others. There's conversation around sponsorship and how you need a couple of types of sponsorship to be effective in accelerating change across the organization. And that is still true, but the way that you think about identifying sponsors and influencers, those change champions, has shifted because of the organization sort of flattening out, so to speak, in terms of, it's less about being in the office and that, that power by proximity and, using hierarchy, like you're going down the org chart and figuring out, who you should engage. It's really distributed and kind of building it around like the tribes and the communities that are forming, and starting to do that. Here's a tool you can use. You can start to keep track of who are the people within the organization, within the project, the different roles, the different levels, geographies that are showing up in this experience in a different way, that are kind of the early adopters, the innovators, and then partnering with them to coach and develop and train and help them understand their role in making the change a success so they can help others do the same. So one thing that I have used in the past, and it's really for me, and it's also for, it was for the project team or the executive reporting for that purpose, is creating a dashboard with people's pictures and putting names and faces and putting this out there so people can see and ask questions and be held accountable. And that's really what all of this is about, is just creating, clarity and elevating the conversation, and clarity is freedom. So by having a clear understanding of who's who and utilizing those individuals, then you start to not only build your network within the organization, but you become an influential leader in your own right. Okay. Lastly, important as from a tactical perspective, and then I'm going to open it up for just conversation because I have been talking a lot at you, and I want you to ask me questions if you have any, or push back on any of the content that I've put out there. But a key part of your role is being able to evaluate, measure, and communicate about the performance of the change of the program that you have designed and implemented. And a way to stay within that lens of human-centered is by asking, questions that are within the context of the individual, what they need. So at Apogy, we train people on change leadership being both an art and a science, which are, we also use art as an acronym. Aware, ready, trained. And so were you aware of what was changing? Did you feel supported by your leadership? Did you have the right mindset for change? These measures, they indicate whether the individual's impacted or really progressing through their change journeys. And since the individual is the unit of change, measuring individual progress can be a leading indicator for overall, change success. So this is an important part of what you do as a change leader and professional, especially kind of in this disconnected environment, being sure to communicate out. And this was important before, so I don't want to say this is like new, we should be measuring. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is being intentional, making sure to do this, and then doing this in a way that stays focused on the human aspects of kind of what people need to be successful as they are being asked to do things differently all the time within the organization. These are some questions that you can use to stay within that space. Okay, again, talking a lot. Any questions, comments? We have about 10 minutes left. I've got just a couple more things, but I do want to see if anybody has anything they'd like to say, share. And thanks for hanging with me this far too. Thank you, Jen. She said great information, so that's good. Glad to hear that. Great question. Thank you for clarifying. So Tobogo asked, are your networks your change champions? Yes, I should have made that distinction. We talk about them as being influencers, but change champion is the exact same person. So thank you. Perfect. Okay. If you have other questions, want to engage in a different way, again, I'm here at the end of the presentation. I'll include my personal information because I would love to support you and, with wherever you're at in your change leadership journey. So be sure to grab that information at the end of the presentation. The last part of this presentation, and I'll go through it fairly quickly, just in the interest of time. I talked about who you need to be and what you can do. Now we're going to talk about where you're going next. So in the digitally enabled workplace, employees are more connected. You have more data to make decisions. Everything's happening faster than before. That is really exciting. Business and tech strategy are sort of interchangeable, but this creates a lot of risk as well, especially if employees are not using the solutions as designed. All those tools that are meant to empower and equip people to collaborate and increase productivity, if they're not being utilized, that results in value loss, wasted capital spend. Like there's a lot of reasons why getting this right is so important for organizations and their ability to, it impacts the bottom line. And understanding what end users, what those internal customers actually want and need is a key part of that process. And because of where you sit as a change leadership professional, as a change management professional, you have this great opportunity to sort of evolve what you do and how. You're working really closely with the front line, with the people that are impacted by the changes that are being sort of decided upon, the strategy at the business owner level. And so you are an intermediary of sorts. You're taking a look at, like, what are the impacts? You're getting their feedback early on in the process. You're working with them while you're designing the change strategy and plans. You're with the end users during the, if you have the opportunity to test and pilot, you're getting that feedback. You are feedback rich, I'll say that. And because of that, you can start to share that information, aggregate that information, surface and shape it with the groups, the teams that are the sources of strategy and innovation that have traditionally done this sort of, here's our idea, roll it out. Now you've got this, like, okay, here's what's coming in. So in the context of process, and I put Apogy's process, we talk about the change leadership processes: define, design, deploy. If you're more familiar with project management, initiation, planning, execution, close. So you're, because of your role, you often serve as the voice of the customer, and it starts at the beginning, before the project is ever rolled out. So you've got lots of moments throughout the project, the change, whatever it is, the life cycle, to get that information, get the needs, the wants, and then, give them back to the business owner. At the same time, because you work so closely with the business owner, the IT department, HR, wherever the opportunity is coming from, you understand to some degree, or you can and should, the strategy of what they are trying to accomplish, right? You might even take it to the next level. Like, you might get into understanding what are the tools and the systems, and kind of what direction are we going from a technology platform perspective, for example. And you can start to align and help people that are asking for certain things at the front line. Okay, you can help them navigate that process. So where can you get that information? Lots of different places. You can do this at any point in the life cycle. You can do it from having one-on-one conversations. You can get that information from surveys. You can take a look at how the company and teams are doing from a performance perspective. Like, if there's a gap, digging in and understanding why are we not, kind of hitting on those goals and metrics. So there's lots of ways that you can understand and surface demand for innovation. And then at the same time, when I was mentioning shaping demand, because you are also close to the strategy, the business drivers for the changes that are happening, you can kind of serve as an intermediary, so to speak. So that can mean aligning the needs with the strategy. That can mean identifying trends and needs. That can mean measuring customer satisfaction, and then getting the lessons learned from that, and bringing those to the teams that are responsible for coming up with the final decision making there. So there's lots of ways to tackle this, rather, and you can do this at any point in not only the change, the life cycle of the change, but also the individual change journey. So hopefully that made sense. One way that you can kind of keep track for yourself, and this is something that, it's, again, very simple tools. You don't need a lot of tech to be effective, but capturing that demand and then identifying which changes are going to be executed, where they are at in either the design or the development or execution, when they're going to be delivered. This is something that you can share not only with kind of business leaders, business owners, but with end users as well in some form or fashion. Like, or you can keep them informed. What people don't like, and I'm, maybe you're on the same page, are surprises. Like, oh my gosh, this is, another change. Like, why are we doing this? The more information people can have, the more they can mentally plan and prepare, the better. So capturing some, the demand and when it's going to happen is a really powerful way for you to maintain that culture, that environment of resilience and adaptability. So again, this whole presentation was about how to up-level as a change leader and professional, starting with some of the kind of the leadership traits and qualities, and then some of the tactical components of your role, and then how to think about evolving as a change professional. So hopefully you got one or two ideas from this entire conversation that you can take back with you and implement in your organization. And at the end of the day, you're in a great spot. There's a lot of demand for roles for people with skills in this area, and you've got a lot of opportunity to impact companies, business outcomes, people on so many different levels. And so it's why I love this profession. It's something that I'm passionate about. So if you would like to learn more and work with me, just to get a plug in there and also give you my information, my email, I don't know if I put it on here actually. It is Jess Crow, JESSCROW at Apogy, APOGY.biz. Please connect with me on LinkedIn, reach out. I am here to support you. We have online training that we offer. We offer coaching with our training as well. And then in April, I am going to launch the first cohort, a networking group opportunity where you get to partner with other individuals from across industries and roles, and get one-on-one coaching with me, and also get certified in our change leadership methodology. So that is part of it. And you get a discount too, because you participated in this workshop. But thank you so much for staying and listening. And this will be replayed and put out on the Mighty Networks platform. And I hope you get a chance to attend some of the other sessions as well. I'm really excited to join the rest of the conference, because I've learned so much from the other speakers. So thank you. I'll hang on for a second if anybody wants to ask questions or provide comments. All right. Thank you, Jen. Talk to you soon. Thank you. Chantal, looking forward to your presentation tomorrow. Dolores, thank you so much. All right. Thank you, everyone. Tobogo, thank you so much. I hope that we connect on other platforms. Would love to hear about you and your story and your journey, and kind of, what's different in your world that I should be thinking about, and how I can make my own my own approach even better. So thank you again. Have a lovely Wednesday. Take care, everyone.